Um, my thing is, we had a class last night, and my focus, I decided to come down to starting at Reconstruction,
Mhm.
at the end of the Civil War, and at the end of slavery.
Okay.
That's going to be my starting point, and I feel comfortable with that because I say that because that was when they started to realize there was this thing called the Freedmen's Bureau,
Mhm.
which was set up in 1865 that helped former slaves adapt to life after slavery. And they provided uh, legal help and food and housing, that type of thing. And of course, it didn't work out, of course, the way that it should have. But I feel more comfortable starting from that point, because what I'm trying to say is basically that's when they started to realize how Black people, former slaves and Black people's health was much worse than they thought, in terms of there was no clear quality, and there was no clear they weren't equal, in other words.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I'm basically going from 1865 up until, and what I want to do is I want to touch on certain things that happened between then and now, in terms of like the Henrietta Lacks story. I'm sure you probably heard about that.
Was
Henrietta
that the one?
Lacks.
Was that the one we talked about last time, where she
Yeah,
was
exactly.
like experimented on and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also too, I wanted to talk about the guy who was the so-called father of modern gynecology. His name was last name was Dr. Francis Marion Sims, and he used to do experiments on enslaved Black women at I think in Maryland. I think at what's the school in Maryland? I forgot the name. I think it's Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins. Okay.
Yeah, Johns Hopkins. Yep. And so that, and also Tuskegee, leading up to COVID, looking at the inequalities of also to the 1918 influenza, and Black folks couldn't get any care then because things were segregated. Jim Crow, they couldn't go to doctors, they couldn't go to hospitals, they weren't allowed to go to hospitals. So I think about that compared to COVID, and when you look at the similarities of how that influenza outbreak 100 years ago, and then here we are 100 years later, the similarities between that and what's happening now in terms of, for instance, essential workers and people of color getting hospitalized more at the beginning of the pandemic, and even now with this new variant going on as well. So, and the thing is, Greg, what I'm trying to do is I'm basically trying to find, as we spoke about last week, I'm trying to find the fine line between trying to find a medical outcome, good medical outcomes for my users. And I haven't really decided yet what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make an app for something like this. No, that's the last thing I want to do, is make an app. You know what I mean? I really would like to focus on not only the similarities, but also just how it was institutionalized into American society in terms of healthcare, of all things, being such a boogeyman. You know what I mean? And then I'm realizing it's just because people are poor, and that's it. That's the reason why there's such an opposition to healthcare for anybody, really, but specifically towards Black people, just because of the history of the medical industry in America towards people of color. And I think, and I just wanted to get your feedback on, actually, I want to just quickly show you my my mind maps. Let me see if this screen share works.
If not, I can turn it on for you.
Okay.
Just give me a second. Okay. Should be all set. So if you might give it a shot.
Okay, this is out. I'm just going to show you this real quick. Now, can you see that?
It's coming up now. I don't see it yet. Okay, now I see it. Yep, it's like it's like post-it notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, for instance, this is what we were talking about last night in the class, and how I want to make PTSD the focal point,
Mhm.
But see, these things that are happening around as far as cancer, heart disease, depression, home remedies, obesity, ADHD, heart attack, sickle cell, high blood pressure, and COVID, those are those are the factors that lead to PTSD. But what I decided to do was, and I'm going to go down to the next one, where I'm showing, for instance, this is another mind map that I did about the connection between slavery and health inequality in 2022. So for instance, I'm doing the same thing, COVID-19, heart attack, stroke, but also see the blue Post-it notes deal with slavery in terms of, for instance, what leads to PTSD, violence and against women and children, family separation, suicide among slaves, families bought and sold. And then over here to your left, children sold into slavery, women forced to give birth, going back to that doctor. The Middle Passage, the root causes of PTSD, and then the yellow stickers after that deal with. Let me just make sure I got that right. Deal with the what's happening in modern day. So, for instance, to your left, you see Tuskegee and Henrietta Lacks, and then more Black women giving birth that die in childbirth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of giving on the outside with the yellow stickers things that are happening today that lead to PTSD and are related to slavery. You know, like I said, racism, violence against kids, against women, against family separation. So I'm trying to make that connection, and that's why I ended up doing three. I did these mind maps at work too. So this being another one. Actually, that's the same one. But let me just go down to this next one. So, for instance, in this one, Greg, this mind map has to do with the idea that I was thinking about in terms of the family tree, genealogy. And for instance, the user would be the actually the yellow stickers deal with the reason why Black people are hesitant to take the vaccine, for instance. Misinformation about COVID-19, twice as likely to be sent home with an infection. People fear of another Tuskegee, transplants, the daily things that Black people go to the hospital for, they're denied. Not even talking about COVID, but just the way that Black people are treated in a hospital, that they're not taken seriously. In other words, it's unequal treatment, and it may not have anything to do with COVID-19, for instance, but just in general.
And it extends into COVID. And I was just thinking, because now they're I forget the name of it, but Pfizer has these pills that are like antivirals that are supposed to make a big difference. And so what will happen there? Will people who are Black patients, will they be less likely to be prescribed those? You wonder, is it going to be the same pattern all over again?
Exactly. And that's kind of that's one of the reasons why, Greg, I am trying to stretch this out in terms of trying to find basically the root causes of these things. And that's why I say, even, COVID put aside, just trying to go to the hospital in general can make you sick. You know what I mean? Because you're not being treated the same as everyone else in terms of having the same disease. It's just like men and women who get sentenced for drug offenses, who non-violent drug offenses, but a Black person will get a life sentence over a joint, over a joint. Like this guy did it in Louisiana. Guy got a life sentence. He was 16 years old. He got a life sentence because he got busted with a joint.
Wow, that's awful. That's horrible.
No, I'm serious. That's crazy.
That's just so
insane. Come on.
Up. That's just
tragic. But see, that's what I mean, Greg. That those kinds of laws are tied into slavery.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those mass incarceration laws. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this particular project, where I really went crazy with this, as you can see. I wanted to kind of like for instance, go like talk, up close to talk about, like I say, DNA links. The user will compare their health to their ancestors. This is what the person would do if they were on a family tree situation.
Right.
DNA links. The user would be African American males and females. What happens when the user gets the info? What does he or she do with it?
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So I'm kind of like all out with this in terms of like trying to find a primary focal point of inequality, basically.
Yeah.
And how it is built into how it's built into the system itself,
Yeah.
And that's a bigger view of my map.
So Chris, oh no, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you
off. Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, like, okay, so there's going to be like a finished product. Is it going to be kind of like a sort of like a digital version of what we're looking at now, where there's going to be kind of like a map that's going to like take like present day health conditions or like disparities and then like relate them back to slavery and to Jim Crow? Is that?
Yeah, that's kind of like what I want to do, but I kind of want it to be from slavery till now.
Right.
Because I want to talk about how these things were already in place 400 plus years ago.
Okay.
And how they are still being enacted, how they're still being enacted today.
Right.
Through different means, through different people will frame it differently and say, that's not what we're trying to talk. That's not what we mean, but this is what's in the system.
Sure.
So I think I prefer to do it from then to now compared
going forward
now to then.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because then laid the groundwork for what's happening now.
I got you.
Basically.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
but it would be some kind of like a digital map in a way. Would it be starting like with slavery up until the present? Like kind of like a timeline.
Yeah, a timeline, definitely. And like I said, I want to start at the end of slavery.
Right. So
when all these things, because it's just, I could do it from the beginning, but I prefer to do it at one specific point. Yeah. At the end of, and how these things were put into place at the end of slavery and at the end of the Civil War. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, it's more manageable because, I mean, now we have, otherwise we'd have like 400 years or whatever, right? So it's just a much longer time frame. Mm-hmm. And, you would think that slavery or the end of slavery would like kind of usher in kind of like ideally, right? Like a reset. Okay, now slavery has been abolished and, how are we going to achieve equality? And then you look at healthcare and it's like one example where that has not been achieved even, like over 150 years later.
Exactly. Yeah. And also too, the guy and other doctors who experimented on Black women, for instance, they experimented on them without anesthesia because they had this mindset that Black people didn't feel pain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's just like kind of like today, for instance, where if someone has COVID and they go to the hospital and they have symptoms and so on, and then the doctors or the nurses tell them, you'll be all right. And they send them home. There's been so many cases since COVID happened of Black people being sent home basically to die.
Yeah.
Because they're not taken seriously when they go to a hospital and the doctors, have all these stereotypes about them in terms of they don't want to give them medicine because if it's a narcotic, the mindset could be, this person's trying to sell this, blah, blah, blah. There's just so many thoughts that go through doctors' heads and nurses' heads in terms of how not to treat people who have COVID, how not to treat them, as human beings, basically, as treating them as like, taking it seriously, I think is what I'm looking for. And so I'm trying to tie in all those things. And again, like I said, I would like to make this into some type of digital map. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Basically a digital timeline.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like where I'd like to go with this, and not, like I said, I prefer to start at the end of slavery, leading to the present. I got you.
That sounds great, Chris. So I'm just trying to think, like, in terms of research, it's a lot of material. I think the books that we looked at before will help kind of help. They won't necessarily help with COVID-19 because they're older, but they'll help kind of with I think, laying the foundation, right? And maybe particularly like, the inequities coming out of slavery, like going back to Reconstruction, maybe up through Tuskegee, and definitely, like, you mentioned Tuskegee, you mentioned the influenza of 1918. I mean, there's definitely going to be a lot of really good sources that could help you, that we can get for you, that will help kind of add information to that. I thought also, just because, like, we're talking about COVID, you're probably going to want to, particularly, like, I think the connection between like COVID and racism, that's probably going to be an area where a lot of the literature is going to be taking the form of like more recent, like, scientific studies, where people are like looking at different outcomes, inequalities in healthcare, access in treatments. So
the mortality rate too, as well. Like, for instance, more Black women die giving birth.
Right.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
More Black women die giving birth than white women in terms of the mortality. And so when they talk about the mortality rate, that basically says that not only Black mothers are dying in childbirth, but children as well.
Absolutely.
So, when we look at that aspect of it, and then we look at someone like that doctor who experimented on Black women.
Yeah.
Do doctors today have that same kind of mindset that says, well, you'll be all right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do doctors have that same kind of like thought process of like that Black women, for instance, are like this, this kind of like superwoman, and they don't feel
feel pain. Yeah.
They don't feel pain. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to tie in those things, Greg. This is what I'm so excited about with this project, because it's like, how could we not make the connection? And someone asked me last night in the class, someone said to me in the class, do you have any biological proof? And I had to tell the person, it's like, and they weren't being snide or anything like that, but I said, when you look at the whole idea of, if a woman can't get, if having a baby is that much work in terms of you could die in a hospital giving birth, because they're not taking you seriously in terms of, you may have pre-existing conditions, you may have other things that are going on, blah, 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 that contribute to your pain.
Yeah.
How could people not take that seriously? Well, they can't take that seriously.
Apparently they don't. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, you look at the public health statistics, that's the evidence, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I chose not to get into that because I was just like, I'm not trying to raise red flags. They've already been raised for damn near 400 years. Please, come on. You know what I'm saying? Come on. This is just like, this is the real world. This is happening. It's not like someone sitting around and complaining about this.
It's
all
reality.
you need to do is look at it's reality. It's right there.
That's right.
The American Medical Association, the statistics are right there, point blank in your face.
Yeah, you can't argue with them.
You can't argue with it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it just seems like, what I mean, these are all facts. And I think it's just a question of, bringing, I mean, they're the claims and they're backed up by facts. And it's just a question of like having the sources. So like when you're saying like there are unequal outcomes, like with, child mortality, women dying of childbirth, it's just a question of like backing it up with the facts, and the facts are going to be there. There's no question. Exactly. They're either going to come from the CDC, or they're going to come from academic journal articles. So there's going to be a foundation that you just have to kind of reference with the claims.
Exactly.
Or like COVID, are more Black people proportionally dying of COVID-19 than white people? Yes. But we just have to get to the CDC or whatever, wherever those statistics are.
Exactly.
And then, so
Exactly.
there's going to be the statistics,
Mhm.
and then there's also going to be the kind of studies that go along with them that try to explain the statistics.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so the statistics are almost certainly going to say, relatively more Black people die of COVID-19 than white people, or, more
Mhm.
get them. And then the studies are going to say that's happening, because of these factors. They're happening because, Black people,
Lack of
don't,
access.
lack of access,
Yeah.
exactly, inequality of treatment,
Mhm. Don't have a car.
don't have a car.
Not everybody's got, this time off to just to go get the vaccine.
Right, exactly.
Um,
Or they can't work
or,
from home,
or they can't work from home. A lot of Black folks are essential workers,
right.
and they have to work.
That's right. That's right.
So when you hear about everyone quitting their jobs, it's like, I know that's not Black folks quitting their jobs in droves like that. It's just not.
Well,
As
yeah.
you know what I mean. I honestly feel that in this day, like with the economy bouncing back the way it is,
Yeah.
that's saying a lot for not only what's going on, but that the economy is making its move back, but slowly.
Yeah.
But it is happening though.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not happening. But the thing is, certain people can't afford to just say, you know what, I quit my job. I'm not going back to work.
Right.
I
Or if they are, they might be just taking another job that has similar risks. You know what I mean? Like they're maybe quitting a job, maybe as an Amazon warehouse worker, and then they're getting it's kind of like a comparable type of job. And then I also read that, so they call it the Great Resignation, right? Like this idea, like all these people are like, oh, we're done with work, yay. But what a lot of what it is apparently is like older people who are close to retirement, so they may be like 62, 63, and they're just kind of, stopping a little early, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like you have, droves of 30 somethings, 40 somethings, 20 somethings. Yeah. And like, just like, all
I don't
right,
believe that I know.
I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go hang out at Starbucks, with my laptop, and,
exactly.
So, or
I have nothing better to do, but I'm going to quit my job and that's it. So yes, definitely, it makes more sense, like you just said, that people who are close to retirement are the ones quitting their jobs in droves, because they can take early retirement. They're close to retirement anyway, so you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
So they may be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're just they're taking a financial hit, but they're just doing it. Yeah, but that's what they're going to be doing anyway in a couple of years. So yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just it's one of those things where it's like how is this affecting who is being affected by this economy,
right?
And health wise, who are the people that are still being left out of the conversation when it comes to equal, because I was reading this thing where too they were talking about how when slaves got sick on the plantation, when we were talking last week about the home remedy thing, and relating that to today, where people, the bulk of the people, for instance, who get COVID, not everybody has a basement to self, to go, to quarantine.
No, they're in an apartment with family.
Yeah. So more Black people. So if more Black people rent than own homes, what does that say about the whole idea of redlining? That built into the system as well.
Yeah.
In terms of not everybody can afford a house, but the reason is because of redlining. The reason is because of a lack of non-generational wealth.
Right.
And so those are the things that I'm trying to like research, Greg, in terms of like relating all those things into the health issue, but still just staying focused on what causes PTSD when it comes to diseases, but also when it comes to the outside forces that contribute to the diseases.
Yeah. Poverty, definitely is
poverty.
Yeah.
Being poor,
and that leads to stress, and then that leads to poor health,
depression. It leads to suicidal thoughts. People say that Black folks don't commit suicide. You want to bet? So what are the things that are leading to those issues? When, for instance, when Blacks were coming over on the slave ships and they would throw themselves and their bodies and their children overboard because they did not want their kids to go into slavery.
Right.
Does that play into the PTSD argument already?
Yeah. absolutely.
before you even come to America.
How could they not have had that? You know, that's a
Yeah.
medical condition that people would have had hundreds of years ago, like today. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah, it was never officially diagnosed, but
No.
you know, it's inevitable that they're going to have that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, what was I gonna say? So I could like to set up another meeting if that's possible, sometime next week. If that's okay, Greg. Once I get more stuff, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What? You know, whatever works for you. You know.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. So I would think that maybe, you know, start looking at the books, see how things are going. And basically what I can help you with is, you know, getting access to information that's going to help you and your project. So, you know, as you're going through and you're looking at, like, you know, if you're like particularly looking at historical events like Tuskegee, you know, the gynecologist, and so what I can do is I can kind of help you. I can help send sources your way that, you know, can help you add information, add detail. Also, let me just, I'm going to, if I could share my screen too.
Sure.
All right, let me just go ahead and do this. And so we're just going back to the sources that we looked at before, that I think, you know, and these are all going to like give you like, I think, a really good foundation. But as we, you know, get into like maybe more specific areas, some of the source types are going to differ a little bit. Like, for instance, when you're talking about, you know, post-traumatic stress, right, in African Americans. So some of those are probably going to be more like articles, like scientific journal articles. And so I just put a couple of links in there. And by the way, I can put the link to this Google form or document, I can put it back in the chat. And so a couple of, I mean, our sources are not going to be good on this because, you know, we're an art school. But, you know, for instance, PubMed, which is like a government healthcare literature portal, that can give you some, like, if you could go through here and see if there are any articles that, you know, seem like they would be helpful for you. And so I'm just going to click on one. Yeah, like, so this, let's just look at this first one just as an example. So, you know, basically you're going to be looking for the full text. And let me just click on that, see if it works. Okay, so sometimes, Chris, this is going to happen. Actually, I should say a lot of times this is going to happen where you're going to get what's called a paywall, where, you know, you get the abstract for the article, like the summary, but you don't get the article itself. And let's say you want that. What you can do is just email me, and then we could probably use interlibrary loan to get you access to like the PDF. So in this case, yeah, look at this, like you have to pay $15. You don't have to do that, you know, when you're in grad school. So we can get you access to that. So you just email me like, Greg, you know, this article looks really good, but I hit a paywall, you know, can you help? So let me, and then, so one definite area would be PubMed. The other would be Google Scholar, actually, and they're going to overlap. They're like two set circles that are going to overlap somewhat. So yeah, let me just put that link back in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing. Right here. I know you had this before, but just kind of give it to you again.
Yeah, no problem.
And Chris, also, like, as you're going through the research, and like, if you feel like you're finding like, okay, I would like a really good source, like on, I don't know, Tuskegee or something like that. You know, you could just, you could just put that right in the, right in that Google Doc, like, you know, Tuskegee would like a source, and then I can look, you know, like next time or whatever, and then we can see, is there some book that would be really, you know, useful on Tuskegee that, you know, we could put in there. So, you know, you get all the information that you need.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much, Greg.
Yeah,
I really
pleasure.
appreciate it. Thank you.
So just send me an email, like when you feel like you'd need to, could use another meeting, and we could set something up, you know. Fridays tend to be pretty, I don't know if Fridays work for you generally.
No, Fridays are fine. Fridays are fine, definitely. Because my days off are Mondays and Tuesdays. And I work like from like 4 to midnight
Okay.
Harvard. You know, I
Okay.
work,
Yeah.
I do security at the dormitories, you know what I mean? So,
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
but I will definitely be in touch this week because, like I said, this was a good meeting today because I really felt I got more of a focus, especially after
Yeah.
last night's class,
Yeah.
talking to Joe about, you know, and I went crazy with, as you can see, with the mind map thing, you
Yeah.
know, because it was really important for me to just say, what are the causes? What are the things that are happening that create PTSD?
Yeah.
You know, the everyday racism and, you know, walking while black and eating ice cream while black and
Yeah.
walking down the street while black, you know, that
Right.
type of thing, like the
Yeah. Sure.
everyday things that people take for granted. And it's like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you calling who? What did I do again? Like, you know, like, so
Yeah. And
like,
I can see like this kind of map where you're like, you know, linking everything together. So, and it's not linear, right? Because like, you know, you talk about like PTSD, like that comes from many different things. Like there,
yeah,
it's gonna,
exactly.
you know, there are all these different causes that are going to kind of work together that, you know, can
And
usually
that
cause
was the
that.
point of me, Greg, linking PTSD and the diseases to everything that's going on around you on a daily basis, but also everything that happened during slavery that's still being played out today that people don't even see or realize. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I felt like with this project, that's why I'm like so excited about it, because like I feel like I'm getting more of a focus now on the whole point of medical outcomes, but how do I get to that point of creating good medical outcomes?
Right. Right.
You know, so
Yeah. 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 And
that's
I
how.
mean, it may even like, you know, give people like, it kind of helps people like see the context. It's kind of, you know, it's not always visible,
Mhm.
but it kind of makes it's kind of like you're exposing things that, you know,
Exactly.
people might not think about or they might not be aware of, you know, like so it's kind of like you're labeling like, oh, you know, the unequal healthcare access, that there's a legacy for that.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
kind of like the past is persisting into the present.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's just, and it's funny too that it took, it's a trip that it's sad, but it took COVID-19 to make people realize, wow, the healthcare system really is biased against Black people.
Yeah.
And we didn't even, you know, like, you know, you know, and you don't even like, and then again, the whole idea of the vaccine thing where people are using the idea of Tuskegee.
Yeah.
It's cause it's it really did happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So you can expect the fear, but at the same time, get the vaccine anyway, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And there's the whole, you know, misinformation.
Yeah, that's
That,
what
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Which
the
is tragic.
misinformation is so racist too. That's what makes it so bad. It's like the misinformation is so racist in terms of people telling Black folks not to get the vaccine, and at the same time, not telling people not to sign up for Obamacare.
Right. Right.
Does that
Yeah.
make any damn sense?
Right. Right. That's so true.
Seriously, man. I mean,
Right.
you're telling me, an anti-vaxxer, you shouldn't get the vaccine. But at the same time, you're against me and my family getting Obamacare created by a Black person. Like, what the
Right.
fuck? Like, come on.
Yeah. It's
I mean,
awful.
excuse my,
No,
I'm
it's all right.
sorry.
It's fine. Totally
I
okay.
mean, seriously, look at the
Yeah.
irony in that.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I know.
it's mind blowing.
It
You
is
know,
mind blowing. Yeah. That's kind of like the way things are right now, just mind blowing in a bad way
yeah,
about so many
exactly.
different things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. It would be nice to just, you know, have things that, oh, that actually makes sense. Like, oh, that's a reasonable approach, you
Exactly.
know, but we don't have enough of that.
No, not at all. Greg, I will be in touch.
Okay,
And
great.
if you could do me a favor, Greg, and just send me a copy of the
Yeah,
tape.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
have to keep, you know, I have to keep, you know, Joe wants things this way, he wants things that way, you know.
Yeah, that's no worries. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'll send it to you. It takes like a little bit to like
That's
process
cool.
and
No
then I'll
rush.
send it and then we'll meet again.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, you have a great
Greg,
weekend,
thank you
Chris.
very much. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Always nice talking to you.
You
Bye-bye.
too. I'll see you.
See you around.
Bye.